Well, Tim the Hashif.
Mi turchus, mi toilet if you show conroot na to chujoch gadú. Ai bria mui.
Agus Chain's head of a horse.
Seamus a bit the Gaelic garam show on a keep brichting. Seamus, Bràighe, Watson, na Mhàthar ma hóclasú. And then you ma hakamed fat. I guess it's true. Gilo Shin.
Agus Colaisde how?
Well, some as an station for who's me as Gàidhlig gonna watach on the main that you gonna get Booth Bay Harbour.
Agus Captain Jack the Hokel.
Well, Jaime Hokel is in, Gilo as na battig in Yearski, waar me giskach gemach, so now me waar me gedi suwas, waar me gemaya wachet in operation, waar kehet bij haar, gemashin a big gemak kaltach doi way of Eoghainn and show who was on a Cape Breton in Nova Scotia.
Agus she is Swanja gehacket.
Well, Seamus, mach Hamish. They got them as Matt Winded.
And this is on film and Gaelic. What is your name?
My name is James Bràighe Watson. Bràighe is an Old Norse name. My grandparents on my mother's side were from Sweden, both of them, one from Skåne and another one from a place that they called Göteborg, which is in English rendered as Gothenburg. Hence, I was named after my maternal grandfather, as far as my middle name. My first name was my father's name, and it was his father's name and his grandfather's name.
And Tim the Hoodoo Elvis in the Gaelic.
Well, maar of I'm again goed right. The way I can help me the same good as the Gaelic that I me no plantier. I guess so now mat by me as a hallwester. I guess who me caught met all no coating. Of course a Saudi can go college na tree and on a Balaclia not a head. I guess who me roepik the yet was the Gaelic shin, no the Gléidheadh. I guess an avlana who me roaming out one old canelanata on an awapa. I guess hook me shacha trish van a you shin, gay shafty shigale or go hack on the so now. Ach, son of a barach the home oolike day that can the heel me gassiga as na hatcha ganat. Smaguutje grow me geen so good ground Andy Cainnt, I guess, as Eilean of parent and Mhàthar. I guess wat Eoghainn the Gaelic, wat Eoghainn a Jane, for you. I guess the Hanshin, Vula Autumn, can be a imachi a hingen oorsko op en uwag, gefang se mach, J. Back Cot, so you could the Gaelic a show, and in America too, I guess. Hanemies, Honemies, Hami Eoghainn and Ocean.
Yeah. So in English, how were you introduced to Gaelic?
My father's parents were from the Maritimes. They came down to Maine to work in the woods. At least the Watsons. The Watsons were from Bedeck, Prince Edward Island, and my paternal grandfather married a woman from Cainnt, who was a MacNeil, and of course there was Gaelic in that family and so forth. They lived in an old farmhouse. There was no running water, but there were books in the house about Scottish culture, the usual ones, things like clan books, that sort of thing. And university, I had an opportunity to go to Ireland to do a summer course at Trinity in Dublin. I went, got introduced to Gaelic and Gaelic people and culture. And the following year I went to the Hebrides in Scotland, became even more interested. And having spoken to my grandmother, who was still living, from Annie, I began to realize there was a Gaelic-speaking area in North America, Nova Scotia, which I investigated, and I've been here ever since. That's, I think, about 45 years ago.
And this being an Openacket, can you tell us some of your work history related to Gaelic?
Yes. I'm a school teacher. I did a BEd at St. Avex in the late 70s. I had hoped for a career in teaching, but no space available, as it turned out, though I substituted for years around Inverness County. I and some other fellows, John Shaw being one of them, Donnie McGilvery, a former history teacher for UCCB, it was then UCCB, and an artist from City Mines called Ellison Robertson. We produced a little book together called Shawagatu, based on field recordings that we made. We formed a co-op, which was called Cape Gale Associates Cooperative, and it ran for about 10 years. We put on conferences, workshops, and we did some collecting in the field, funded by small grants, that sort of thing. We were endorsed by UNESCO for the World Decade of Cultural Development, and we were allowed to use their logo on our business cards, which was a bit of a success. We were endorsed at their AGM in Paris in 1986, I think. In any event, subsequently, the economy around the co-op was hardly what one would call privileged, and people went their various directions. I went to work for Nova Scotia Highland Village around 1984, I think, doing Gaelic programming there. I subsequently became the manager of interpretation, dealing most specifically with Gaelic matters, staff training, outreach programs for the community, which I'm most focused on. Not so much on tourism, more interested in Gaelic culture as a tool for social and economic development in the community that it belongs to. And I've been there for over 30 years.
And you're involved with some other work too, with An Drochaid Eadarainn, for instance. And
I've done a number of other projects, An Drochaid Eadarainn being one of them. I was a principal interviewer for the Cainnt Mhàthar project, helped design it, and did do a fair bit of the field work as far as recordings went. Some of the transcription work as well. I've done quite a bit of independent field recording, not so much lately, but in the 80s and 90s, when there were considerably more when there was considerably more Gaelic speakers here to interview. So that's sort of been the pathway. I think it's important to note that the field in Cape Breton or Eastern Nova Scotia is comprised of a variety of different cultural Gaelic emanations. We have Protestant and Catholic communities. We have communities that are based on Hebridean descent, from mainland descent, and all of these communities, in as much as the eastern counties were settled in patterns of chain immigration, have very special qualities in terms of their corpuses. These include things such as their story corpuses, their song corpuses, their own kinship system, certainly, bard or song maker representations, and so forth. So I come to realize over the years or decades at this point that this is an extremely rich Gàidhlig overall. Of course, this is borne out in collections such as the Cape Breton Gaelic collection at St. Eoghainn and so forth. And a very special place.
Is there any one person or people who inspired you to get involved in Gaelic and helped you learn the Gaelic too?
The Gaelic speakers themselves,
yes, most
certainly. And I've had many mentors over the years. They've a lot of them have passed on since now, but I think of people like Gléidheadh, Joe Neil McNeil, the famous storyteller from Middle Cape. Another one who I was very close with for years was Colaisde from Bain and Gléidheadh, which is Owl's Mountain over in back of West Bay, I guess, somewhere between West Bay and Marble Mountain. Didn't really speak very much English until he was 30, and he preferred to speak Gaelic. I think that his family was of Inner Hebridean stock, possibly Tyree. Just a wonderful singer. Couldn't read or write, but owned a sawmill and made his living that way. And operated a ceilidh house. He was well known for welcoming people in day or night. Particularly like to have people come to the house after dances in Valley Mills. And others as well. The people on the North Shore, people from Inverness County, people from Central Cape Breton, all of whom had something special to offer with regard to their own variety of Gaelic language and expression, including, as I said, their cultural corpuses and their dialects.
So you also did some work, volunteer work, I'm sure, along the way, as in other roles, like special advisor role or directorships?
I was one of the first people to bring forward the Féis and Eilean idea to the folks in Christmas Island. I've served on the Gaelic College board in years gone by. I've been involved with innumerable projects involving school children, community-based events and programming. I was the Gaelic editor for Am Bràighe magazine for 10 years, that sort of thing. My involvement with this has been long and varied.
And the Barr program, you were a mentor with that program?
I was a mentor with Barr.
That program.
Yes, I wrote a good part of the original Barr program to set it up as a mentorship. I've also been very much involved in organizing Stòras of Baile, the 4-day Gaelic Folk Life School. It's an immersion event at Highland Village. The idea behind these particular events is to develop a pedagogy which is based on social learning theory. What we think is important about this kind of programming is that people aren't focused on language. They're focused on learning culture. Thing is, you have to have the language to learn the culture. So rather than putting language ahead of culture, we put culture ahead of language, and the necessity of the language makes itself apparent very quickly when it comes to learning stories, forms of social etiquette, songs, all of these various facets of Gaelic culture for which the language is central. So we don't, that's one particular area of initiative that I'm very much involved in.
Who do those on Glasgow?
Who would?
I was the David a she Jig.
Very good.
In she beckon me in Shin.
Well, she tachers blianal a haun. Agus bí roin na dúis an goríirech man gúirs. Ek in you when you roin oped lé san lesachug agus arstachug na Gaelic how as an John dúis. Agus leis mar a hacher goed goedjik in de stoi menjamse was gefeins gierig nomination na enjamachug is karam douche I guess hoe mi noorshin bra en you en je va Gléidheadh ga gehoorste nog ook tagerste sa show I guess could go wow I guess ga mi enjamachug san douche san open varistje san the Gaelic excellent some work for Gaelic I guess I'm a heens maar ben all I guess ban enke de skans hoor me in douche I guess had it been nach me hier der Riev as America tua a hoe douche ik na halpen ik na Gael how
so I was asking in Gaelic you received a special award in 2016 at the Scottish Gaelic Awards in Glasgow, Scotland. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, I was nominated for an award at an event in Glasgow that's held by I think it's a daily record there, and Boris na Gaelic annually, and the purpose is to celebrate Scottish Gaelic culture and to give awards to people who have had made contributions they considered to be significant to Gaelic culture in Scotland. Somebody nominated me based on the work that I've done here in Nova Scotia. We got a phone call to go, and so we did, my wife and I, and I was quite flattered simply to have been nominated, but I did actually win the award for, I was awarded the award for excellence in Gaelic contribution for 2016. So I got a little plaque, and it was there was a ballroom atmosphere, and the media, CBC covered it, and so forth. I felt that there were so many people there who have made wonderful, long-standing contributions that I was quite humbled to have been considered for this. And so when I thanked the organizers and the audience that was there, I thanked them on behalf of the Gaels of Nova Scotia. So,
very good.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Well, thanks so much. As I say, it's really the community itself are the ones who deserve the real credit for this.
So regarding music, again, I know you were involved in the compilation of the CD Colaisde Crane, which happened in the 80s, wasn't it?
I think so, some time ago now, possibly the 90s.
Yeah, it was a very good project, and
yes,
a very good CD.
Yeah, still on the go.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
It was Wendy Berkfeld who cooperated with Committee Féis and Eilean, the Christmas Island Féis Committee, to put this together. And a number of people were invited, quite a number of them who aren't with us now. It turned out to be a compilation of Gaelic songs, fiddle music. Joe Peter McLean was the fiddler, and pipe music. There was one song in particular that they wanted sung. It was composed by Hughie Mackenzie, the late Hughie Mackenzie of Christmas Island. And if my memory serves me, it's been a while, the words to it weren't immediately available. I think we had a recording of it at Highland Village and managed to get a transcription together. I can't remember who sang the song on the CD itself at this point. And in any event, it was a song, it was a satire about duck hunters who would come out to Benacadie Pond to go duck hunting, and what kind of a day they had, and how they shot so many ducks they needed a boxcar to get them transported back to Glasgow, and kind of poking fun of people who would like to do those kinds of things. I'm a little vague on memory about that, so if I'm quoting erroneously, I'm sure somebody will set me straight.
That's fine. You sang a song yourself on that CD.
I did.
Do you remember the name of the song?
Mavua Nichu Nian Green. It's a sailing song, an old country sailing song.
Very good song.
Traditional, yeah.
Huh? Would you consider singing a song for us?
I could sing you 3 or 4 verses of that. Just
that'd be great.
If you'd like to hear it.
Uh-huh.
Perhaps you can help me on the chorus.
Oh, I'll try.
My wind isn't what it used to be. Yes, that's an old country song. It's a sailing song. It was sung at milling frolics. It was known on the North Shore, and it was also known in central Cape Breton, possibly elsewhere as well, but those are the 2 places that I encountered it. The style of singing, again, a little different in the central Cape Breton area, as in comparison to the North Shore. My style of singing it is probably closer to the North Shore, St. Anne's Bay area. It's been quite a while since I've sung it, so I'll try 3 or 4 verses, and perhaps that'll do for today.
Great, thank you. That'll be great.
There's a euphemism here. Mavua Nichu Nian Green means if one should win a fair lass. And that's a reference to the ship itself. And of course, this song comes from the day of sail, when ships sometimes were not all that sound and safe on sea. Mavua Nichu Nian Green, Ilia na bigruai marst. Lad, feel no regret, or do not be despondent. And again, it follows Mavua Nichu Nian Green. The verses are in couplets. I'll try it. Mavua Nichu Nian Green, Ilia na bigruai marst. Mavua Nichu Nian Green. Wagos min stjorn väst betjäl noch mer gås ad Mavua Nichu Nian Green Ilia na bigruai marst. Mavua Nichu Nian Green Choshindia forsels kontrata gik auf Uarag. Mavua Nichu Nian Green Ilia na bigruai marst. Mavua Nichu Nian Green Choshin Lia Main Selskan ba Skabete gik auf Uarag. Mavua Nichu Nian Green Ilia na bigruai marst. Mavua Nichu Nian Green Gléidheadh van en toon Fralna givor wanya. Mavua Nichu Nian Green Ilia na na bigruai mors ma bua nichu, ni an green sonastest fat silgaroic and huraguali ma bua nichu, ni an green nidia, na bigruai mors ma bua nichu, ni an green. That's just a little piece of it, but it'll give you an idea anyway.
And this odd on the shed left.
Tumas you wound ha corte grun comor a boring on grind. A boring on tug again get fetchach fedetings.
And this Gaelic I can tell what happened.
Well, I could check. I think you do a parski and your ni Callan ma vachsa fetish in you ni is an Conrabs the Gaelics, Gàidheal and Gaelics. Shania Guya and Yo. Ni a step the gas. I want to say Mac a shame, me guy. So I come shall fill it. Nisha ha ni an a soy kakam nisha Conrab the Shenachas the Gaelics. And you regal or and I took him more than Seamus na har in your eater. Ach, kui neo. I guess I make a step of good job.
I guess be a brain.
Oh, Brady ga ni Conrabs the Gaelic ni. I guess in G stelle you Ferisoika on us hit and your moren ach Gléidheadh the hui make as the Gaelic. I guess I nian ella and Jay is shinna you and nearly hain could more than Seamus the Gaelic. Ach and G is you shin had Basel as a coach Gaelic in me grind.
I guess I'm not missile of the hill.
I don't say yeah. And G.S. you shin it and took me in with a gotchin. I don't want to miss a kill. And I guess Lila Cainnt and Shay Quay and I that's bad. Quay Callan portion the guy could you.
In this Sabhal, I was asking you about your family members and they speak Gaelic or.
There are 4 of them. They all have at the very least, a passive understanding. 2 of them, the oldest boy, Colin, he speaks quite fluently, and he's conversational.
He's appeared in concerts too at Celtic College.
He's quite a good singer, actually, if I can say so. And old style, a cappella, and pays attention to the old styles of singing, and he listens to the old tapes and. We spoke Gaelic in the house as he grew up, and there were lots of Gaelic-speaking people coming to the house, so he had those opportunities. There's another one, Lilac, as we call her. She's becoming quite a good fiddle player. She is a good step dancer, and she isn't particularly interested in songs, but. She's completely conversant in Gaelic, so we could speak Gaelic all day if we wish.
That's wonderful.
The other 2 have little or no interest, although passively, if you speak to them in Gaelic, they reply in English. So it's a very strange thing,
but they understand it.
Oh yes, yeah.
At the tuition.
At the tuition.
So I'm going to ask you now, what changes you've seen over the years. With regard to Gaelic in Nova Scotia, starting with the history of Gaelic, I'm sure you know a lot about the history of Gaelic in Nova Scotia.
Perhaps a bit.
There was a report written in the early 2000s, the Kennedy report.
Yes.
Things like the style of the milling products, ups and downs. We've had some ups and downs.
Yes.
So there's changes.
There's so many interrelated factors. Gaelic, as a community-based language, has receded enormously since I first came here. with that recession comes a cultural environment within which that social transmission, which I just mentioned, the difference between Scotland and here, has in large measure, except for certain families and individual households, seems to have ceased. This is, again, a fairly drastic scenario, in as much as the natural breath and body of Gaelic has, in many ways, left these communities, as we knew it, at least amongst older generations. At the same time, there seems to be, and I would also go to say that institutionally Gaelic language and culture here, except when it could be used for something or used to for some economic tool or purpose, it has been treated with enormous prejudice for 3-4 generations at least. And I'm not so sure that that situation has changed all that much right at the present, if you want to get right down to it, to be completely honest. At the same time, there is some softening of attitudes around this. The community over the last 20, 30 years has worked quite diligently to make Gaelic language an issue, to the extent that we now have an Office of Gaelic Affairs, which is an important institutional step forward. We have a Minister for Gaelic, which is means that there's a political acknowledgement there. There is a greater presence of Gaelic in the school system, which is a positive step forward. But in the absence of community-based education and a community-based environment, a social environment for Gaelic, one might wonder the little bit of Gaelic, because certainly Gaelic language and culture is not the purview or the direct object of an English-based education in Nova Scotia. One might wonder where those children go who learn a little bit of Gaelic and get a little cultural orientation in the school system when they leave school and enter the community where such things live organically. In my own place of work, we've seen Nova Scotia Highland Village gain branch status with a proclamation that clearly delineates the responsibility of Highland Village to the culture and language of the Gaels. The message being that material collections such as buildings, artifacts, and the like are not the primary purpose for the village to educate people about the Gaelic story in Nova Scotia for incoming audiences. The Gaelic College has certainly changed a lot in the recent years. Something is quite welcome. It's no secret to anybody that the Gaelic College has been controversial over decades gone by, almost on a cyclical basis. That seems to be heading in a much more positive direction at present.
Enrollment is up, it seems.
Yeah.
With people, young people.
Yes.
Showing interest.
Yes, no question. Attitude, which is a reflection of, it's a microcosm of improved attitudes generally amongst the public. However, that what still remains is we have a very severe economic problem in the worse now than ever. I think in the traditional Gaelic-speaking regions of Nova Scotia, we have a drastic lack of young people here. The organic presence of Gaelic in these communities, which is where once people have had some classes, they have to have a place to organically express themselves and to receive expression, which far exceeds the capacity of a classroom to deliver. And so, having said that, we have there's a good and a not so good side to not all of this. Tremendous amount of we've lost a tremendous amount of culture and language here. We're losing our communities in terms of their population, particularly among young people. The brain drain also continues on, most certainly. The agricultural lifestyles are almost as a thing of almost arcane at this point, and so a lot of that community-based environment, social support, Gaelic language expression, cultural expression, that has withered tremendously. And but at the same time, institutionally, there's more pickup. So our challenge really is to improve the situation on all fronts, but most especially in communities where organic lifestyles formulate around the use of language and culture.
So what future do you see for Gaelic in Nova Scotia in years to come from here on?
I think there's I'm quite optimistic. I think that the challenge in the community is the real Cainnt, as people would say, the real marrow of the matter, and that's where the real work has to happen. If Gaelic language and culture is going to have an organic presence outside of institutional settings, and I think that Gaelic language and culture, those who think it's important, are potentially a very powerful constituency. I think that they have collectively the potential to influence government with regard to their expectations. That apparatus is in place. This includes aspects of programming, the type of funding that's being awarded for Gaelic development, the status of Gaelic itself in the province, monitoring all of that, I think there's a tremendous amount of potential to develop community-based educational programs. In microcosm, models of those could be considered Bunas Stòras, immersion programming, such as the Gaelic College is doing, and some independents. Yes, I think to continue to build on a community-based capacity, which will rationalize the institutional classrooms, programming, and outreach. Gaelic language and culture. More importantly, when I speak of Gaelic language and culture, I'm speaking here of the Gaelic people, of the Gaels themselves. We're not trying to preserve a language, or at least it's my viewpoint. We're trying to preserve a people. And those people reside in our communities. If they are to remain the models for Gaelic expression and cultural expression in Gaelic language, then that has to be alive, that has to be progressing, developing, it has to be well, it has to have a deep self-confidence in itself, it has to embrace its historical, linguistic, and cultural history, and create an organic platform for continuation of that. Otherwise, these improvements in our institutional status for the Gaels will have no place to go when it closes the classroom door behind it.
So do you have some advice for Gaelic learners of any age?
We can take a look at pedagogy a little bit. I would preface that by saying that the purpose of learning to speak the Gaelic language hinges on the concept of an ethnocultural group, the Gaels. Culture is the most important aspect of language learning. If there is no cultural if there are no cultural differences, or differences that are cultural expressions that are specific to the Gaels as an ethnocultural group, they don't need their language anymore. So my approach to this is simply that Gaelic language learning is about preserving the Gaels. What will distinguish the Gaels and preserve them is their cultural expression. What's necessary to sustain and maintain cultural expression is Gaelic language. So on an order of values, if we could even call it that, there's a rather, shall we say, there's a paradigm within which all of this works. The rationale for which is the preservation of a distinct ethnocultural group who call themselves Gaidhal, or Gael, if you wish. Now, my advice to people who are learning Gaelic is to, one, take a good look at the cultural expression that distinguishes the Gaels. This encompasses a vast oral literature, a cosmology, a religious viewpoint, a sense of humor, and on it goes. All of which, very much of which, if not all of which, is quite different in the way it manifests itself from the way that Anglophones, Francophones, and other ethnic groups express themselves.
And dialects comes into the picture too.
Various
dialects in Cape Breton itself.
That's right. That's right.
Very unique.
Exactly. And these dialectical differences contain quite a wealth of Gaelic expression. There are lexical items, there are idioms, and so forth that distinguish one from the other.
The intonation.
Yes.
In English as well, you'll hear the Gaelic in their English. And
yes.
Some of my relatives in the generation before me, their English was full of Gaelic.
Yes, of course it was. Not unlike your own, I like that. So I think that learners should consider these things and decide what it is they want to do. Do they want to learn a specific dialect? Do they want to focus on certain cultural corpuses that dialect represents in eastern Nova Scotia? I think the next thing is to find somebody who can deliver that, and this goes back to the whole need for greater development, more resources for developing professional development. For a lot of what we do is, we get over the hump somehow, but professional development, there's so little funding for this that it makes it difficult to sustain a lot of these ideas or achieve the principles of them. The next thing I would look at is there are different approaches to learning Gaelic. They are linguistically referred to as psycholinguistic and sociolinguistic. Psycholinguistic is an approach to language learning. They use it in universities, for example, very often, where one simply concentrates on the grammar and the nuances of the language mechanically in the absence of its cultural representations. That's psycholinguistic. Sociolinguistic, on the other hand, is environmentally positioned. It's put in place in an environment where language learning entails personal interactions in the household, in the community, in the neighborhood, at the store, at the dance, and so forth. Now, that's not to say that a good command of grammar isn't a useful or desirable thing. It certainly is. But if one has only obtained a mechanical ability to use the language, devoid of its cultural applications, I would question as to what exactly it is you have at the end of the day, outside of perhaps something we might call a code. So those are a few thoughts on.
Devotion is good, and listening is always.
You have to be interested.
Yeah. They tune the ear.
You have to be interested, and you have to be motivated and self-directed very often. Regardless of what the quality of educational opportunities might be there for an individual, if the motivation isn't there and how that needs to be applied in self-direction, then people aren't going to go very far very fast, I would suggest.
Well, this might be a good point for a good Gaelic story. They'll steal a hacket, Sabhal.
Well, the good could be Cévé Gacam. I'll try this story. One other aspect of Gaelic culture in Nova Scotia is the huge number of stories over multiple genres that we have here. Quite remarkable, really. And very fortunately, a fair number of these have been archived. But in any event, this particular story is what's called an Am Bràighe story. We'll translate that as a wise fool story. And it concerns a character who is still remembered down to the present day. And possibly there are older people in the community who may remember him. His name was Domhnall Eoghainn. And if memory serves me, he was a McGuinness. And Domhnall Eoghainn means Donald, the son of Brown Hugh. And he was from a place called Gléidheadh, which is also known with its post office known today as St. Ninian, here in Inverness County. Domhnall Eoghainn was a oft-quoted wit, the stories of whom and about are still heard to the present. This story concerns an occasion when he was tramping the roads and passed through the village of Mhàthar at a time when there was an asylum there for lunatics. If that's BC, I'm not sure, but in any event, so they were called, a lunatic asylum. Coiu era wa rasho, va a het Domhnall Eoghainn, fómharráid. Agus an am ba Drochaid An Drochaid Mabú mar a gabrige toha an you. Chainnt bhla arm go chairitecha Ostaig san tá chuis a bhain san nán. Agus chur a ráid go racha go Ostaig gus céirí beca dhéanagéid. Go you gab Ostaig gan tá chuis Hiora an dunne bhain agus chud a meach far roa agus gailtícha de chélas hánat bhí cána Gléidheadh. A bat an uair gus ró an Hamilton mar a gabrige trú. Táiseach hána í dhéanse gá man na thuris gin a bheca. Bha gan éiri cóch an tá chuis agus dúra atá tíng amach gan dar agus súlara. A roach Gléidheadh ma bha súim san bí ag tá an dúin an an túahannachas. Agus jochta go amach an dáiseach well. Highland Hamilton ed go chosa go hing amach go cú an tá chuis go féisce ga. Na thuris gin a bheca gan éiri. Gan tóca. Ma érig útiche go amach, chai amach, war fenk na mochgang. Sin agus waf tá an dúin nós hes a cúl is an enk. Van Hamilton díach go chosa agus mág na nuris gin a bhain agus a gnaidí tá an dúin. Tjúdi man górs hesúleid na thuris gin at na mochgan at a has an enk. Nach het bria, nach het erachgal. Wel, mi érig, die tá an dúin man górs hoek a súl a Ostaig an enk. Agus dat a die het nash, si an amating. Horst an damat an díach sa vinnig. Nach het sin bria gáil. Agus rikker dá, chearsta choúa. Cur nach biget cho erachgal. Han a hamating gan bíach. Agus ha in government a peig a han. Give me the version.
Now, do you want to explain it in English for those that don't have the Gaelic?
There was a wit, a traveling wit, we'll call him, who tramped about the countryside from Inverness County, a place called St. Ninian, I think is what it's called today. And on this particular occasion, as he was passing through Mabu and Drochaid, the bridge as it was called then, through the village, at that time there was a lunatic asylum there. And he remembered that he had a friend who was an inmate at the asylum, decided to go in and visit, did so, found out where he was, they met, they greeted each other, and it wasn't long before the inmate began to tell Domhnall about the piglets that he was raising out back of the asylum. And he began to coax Domhnall, Donald Brown, son of brown-haired Hugh, to come out and look at them. Well, Domhnall had no interest in farming whatsoever, and he sort of brushed him off. But the other fellow persisted, and so finally Domhnall went out to look at the piglets, and there was a big pen in back of the asylum. Domhnall went to the pig pen and stood with his back to it. The inmate continued to insist that he turn and look at the pig, saying, look how beautiful those piglets are. And turn around, Donald, and have a look at those lovely pigs. Finally, Donald turned around, Domhnall turned around, glanced at the pigs, turned back, and the inmate immediately said, aren't those beautiful piglets? And just as quickly, Domhnall replied, why wouldn't they be? Fools feed them and the government pays for it.
That's a great story. Thank you. So would you like to add anything else today before we end the interview, Seamus?
I'd like to thank you for the invitation to say a few words for this survey, for this project that you're working on. And I'd like to say thanks for that. And if I have anything to say that's worth listening to, hopefully it will go towards further development and making things better for the Gaels in Nova Scotia, their culture and language.
Thank you.
Happily.
And I'd like to thank you on behalf of the Gaelic College for participating in
Happily.
the interview. And we really appreciate your time and your knowledge. And, you've shared a lot today. So thank you. More than thank you.
Well, I'll share it.